Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another exciting session of IAPSM Medical Education Series. Before we begin, let me address the gathering and request all the participants to kindly put your audio on mute in case if there are any queries. We'll have a Q&A session followed by the main presentation. And even subsequent concurrently, if there are any queries or doubts, you can please post in the chat box so that we can take up with the speaker for today after the session is over. So, good evening, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure. Today is day of gratitude as well as day of double excitement to have one of my very close friend, Dr. Tanvir Kaur Sidhu, on the panel. First, I would like to welcome Dr. G.M. Mohammed, sir, Senior Associate Professor, PSG, Coimbatore. Dr. Mohammed, sir, has also our governing council member for South Zone 2, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Puducherry. Mohammed sir has got vast experience of almost 2 decades of UG and PG teaching. Sir is a FAMER fellow from PSG Coimbatore, also regional FAMER faculty at PSG Coimbatore FAMER Regional Institute. Sir has held a lot of positions in the medical education as well as community medicine and public health, wing from the MET core committee faculty member to faculty in the PSG FAMER Regional Institute, NSS program officer, vice chair Tamil Nadu TB State Task Force, etc. He has contributed in various capacities as a resource person as well as project manager. I hand it over to Mohammed sir to take the proceedings further and introduce to the gathering about today's speaker, Dr. Tanvir Kaur Sidhu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wasim. Thank you for the introduction. It's my privilege to introduce speaker of this session, Dr. Tanvir Kaur. Her roles and responsibilities are amazing. She is currently a professor and head of Department of Community Medicine, Adesh Institute of Medical Sciences and Research from Adesh University, Punjab. She is also a General Secretary of IAPSM Punjab chapter. Happy to have her here. And she is a resource faculty for FAMER, FRI, CMC Ludhiana. And her area of interest, of course, medical education and health promotion, mental health. Her experience about 20 years in this field, UG, PG teaching, and she's member of IAPSM, IPHA, HP, BPNI, EFI, IDPD, and NAMS and all. And she's trained in medical education and certificate courses in health research fundamentals and soft skills and stress management. She had 60 papers in national and international journals. And she authored books about the medical ethics, thesis writing, health promotion. She had developed a module for undergraduates in medical research. It's amazing, ma'am. So nice to have you, ma'am. So I'm one among you waiting to listen to this topic. Portfolios in medical education. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for giving such an elaborate and warming introduction for me. In fact, I would first like to thank IAPSM at the outset to give me this opportunity to share my experience, whatever I have till date, with all of this august audience today. So I'll just put my slides on the slideshow. I hope the slides are visible. Is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, visible.
Okay, thank you. So in the next few minutes or an hour or so, we will be talking about the portfolios in medical education and how these portfolios are helping us in leveraging, in moving from the documentation to impact. So while moving through this session, we will be going through these points. First of all, we'll be taking up what actually is a portfolio, and more importantly, what it is not. Then why is the need of having these portfolios in the current medical education scenario? How to structure and purposefully use these portfolios, and then who are the potential users and where all we can have the opportunities to introduce and utilize these portfolios. While discussing all these points, we will be also discussing few of our own experiences from my own institute and my own personal experiences and examples. Though we have planned this session for 30 minutes, which was the time given by me to me by the organizing team, but because we'll have few demo videos in between and some, I'll show you some of the portfolios created by our group. So maybe it will take another 10 minutes for the demo sessions also. So please bear with that extended time. Okay, so moving on to the first point, what actually is a portfolio? So some of us might have already heard about this word. Some of us might also be using some kind of portfolios. But exactly what do you see when you envision a portfolio? Right, so many of you may have heard of the portfolios being created by artists or by art persons or by architects. And this is where the word origin of the portfolio came. So the portfolio concept actually came from the area of the artwork, where the people used to put their to showcase their best works in the places to create portfolios. Many of you might also have heard of portfolios these days. Your kids might be coming for the summer work, which is given to them, projects where they have to create portfolios in which they have to collect information and things related to whatever work is given to them during that period, where they document it and they have to present it. And many of us also might have experience with these kind of portfolios, the portfolios related to the stock management or to the mutual funds these days, where it gives us a vision of what we are investing, how the growth is happening, how much more we can invest or what we need to change. And finally, what is my position today in relation to that? So with this concept of all different kinds of portfolios, let us come to discuss what the portfolio means when we talk of the medical education. So the concept of portfolios is quite new to the medical education, and it has been only a few decades since when the portfolios have started to come up. And if I talk of the country of our India, the portfolios are still in a very basic inception stage. So most of the definitions, if you go through the portfolios, are given by the foreign people, foreign authors, and you will find many of these definitions in the literature, and the portfolios are actually being utilized by the Western countries since almost 2 decades now. Even in India, you'll find examples from nursing field and from physiotherapy field where portfolios are being utilized. But again, portfolios are not much well understood and utilized in the medical education. So by going through all this literature and the definitions of the portfolio, one thing which I could extract for all of you to understand here today about portfolios is that the portfolio is a multi-purpose educational tool which can stimulate and synthesize learning, as well as provide us authentic assessment opportunity. Right? So actually, the portfolio value, the value of a portfolio depends highly on what content, what structure, and what actually is the purpose for which we are creating portfolios. So basically, we can have different types of portfolios. For example, if the purpose of a portfolio is only to demonstrate learning, we may have reflective portfolios, we may have learning portfolios. Sometimes portfolios are also used for assessment to show the accomplishment and growth over time. So these kind of portfolios are generally labeled as assessment portfolios or the educator's portfolios. And sometimes when we combine this learning and assessment together, we sometimes call them as comprehensive portfolios. Sometimes the portfolios are being used only to showcase the best works of the learner or the achievements and the progress, where the purpose actually is to showcase your best things Maybe when you are going for a career opportunity or a professional place where you want to show your best work. So basically, the point here is that the portfolio has to be structured according to what purpose you are going to use it for. May I request the organizers to please put the people on mute? Yeah, thank you. So let us now further understand what actually is a portfolio. So portfolio, many of times we think of is a tool, is an assessment tool or a learning tool. But after synthesizing all the literature, I could make out that portfolio is actually a whole system in itself. A portfolio exists as an ecosystem in which the foundation of which is based in the work environment. So the portfolio ecosystem, the foundation of this is in the work environment. In this work environment, there are a lot of faculty, mentors, coach, advisors, assessors, right? However, the center of the portfolio is always the learner. So the portfolios are learner-centric tool which exist in the work environment, along with a lot of people who are going to assist this learner in his learning process. Now, what happens in this ecosystem? There is an interaction between all of these components where the learner is exposed to a work experience. So whatever work experience a learner gets exposed to, the portfolio helps that learner to reflect on that. So the reflection of the learner on his experience is being documented by the learner. And this is followed by the feedback with the help of the advisors, the mentors. They all provide the learner with the feedback on his experience as well as on his reflection. Now, these mentors may also act as assessors at times and provide this learner with assessment on that experience, on that work which he has done, right? After this assessment, this process gives that learner an opportunity of reattempt or the remediation opportunity or an advancement. If the learner is a high performer, the advancement opportunity is offered to him. And with this, accumulating the whole of the synthesizing everything, the experience, his reflection, his feedback, the assessment, and how he performed, he develops the action plan for performing the next activity. So this all works in sync to create the learning trajectory of the learner, which is actually in a spiral form which goes upward to finally build his professional identity. So this is the complete ecosystem with which we want to operate at the level of the portfolio. So now if I try to summarize all this as to what a portfolio is, so portfolio is actually a dynamic live document with a structured, purposeful collection of evidences of work experience, the reflections of the learner, the feedback being provided by the faculty, mentors, advisors, the action plans for future work, and finally the progress over time. So this whole ecosystem helps the learner in his learning journey. Having said that all, let us now focus on what actually a portfolio is not. Many a times we confuse the logbooks with the portfolios, and actually these days we are quite obsessed with the use of logbooks because of some of the guidelines or compulsory requirements from the higher authorities. So let us try to understand that portfolios are not at all upgraded logbooks. In fact, the only similarity between the logbook and a portfolio is the listing of the materials or the activities, right? So if I say now, the logbook is only one component of the portfolio. So the first part, the experience part, work experience part, that is only the logbook. The rest of the things which happen in the ecosystem, they are a part of portfolio, which actually make the learning happen. To further elaborate on this, the logbook and the portfolios, because again, I want to clarify at this point very clearly that logbooks and portfolios are two very different things, right? So logbooks, how are the logbooks being created or how are they working? They work on a basis of a checklist. And this checklist has a number of items. So basically it is quantity based. So how many competencies or certifiable competencies you are adding, how many things you have to add to be completed by the student. And they all are added by the faculty. So the logbook format is completely created by the faculty, given to the students to fill, get it signed from the faculty, and the logbook is ready. However, if you look at the portfolios, they will have the evidence of the work done. They will also include reflections. They will also include a lot of narratives. So this is the strength of the portfolio. The narratives can be open narratives, reflections, anything they want the feelings to be expressed related to the whole of the learning process. So basically, if you look at the portfolios, they reflect on the quality of the learning and the growth trajectory of the learner. Since every learner will not be achieving every, if I say the certifiable competency in a definite period of time. So that growth trajectory will always be different for different students. And this, as I said in the earlier point, it's always learner driven. So the learner has to put the effort to create the learning opportunities, to create them into actual assessment later on. So if I say here, the logbooks are only focused on the task completion, which we can say compliance, and hence they are static, while the portfolios focus on competency development. And the competency development is always a dynamic process. So it cannot be done on one date. Say, for example, you are just signing the logbook on the date this is done. So competency development requires the whole ecosystem to be present for the student or the learner to actually achieve the desired learning outcomes. Moving further, let us now focus on why portfolios. Why not something else? Why we want portfolios in the current scenario of medical education. So I'll be presenting before you 4 arguments why to use portfolios these days. The 4 areas would be, first, the CBME. We all are into the CBME era. The second would be using portfolios for transformational learning. Third would be portfolios acting as tools for assessment as learning. And fourth is using portfolios in programmatic assessment. So many of you, if you have not heard these terms, will just try to describe in brief about these. But yes, CBME we all have experience with. We are all experiencing it from the past 6-7 years. So what does CBME says? What does CBME demands? The CBME, whole of the competency-based medical education, which we are now following in the medical system, is actually based on 2 things. What is the teaching learning and what are the assessment methods we are using? So this CBME works against the background of competency framework. So the competency framework has to be utilized both for teaching learning as well as for assessment. So when we are talking of a competency, we know that competency would be an integration of knowledge, skills, attitudes, communication, and professionalism. So these portfolios actually provide us a framework where all these domains of the competencies can be actually included in the learning process of the student. So if we are talking of professionalism, just reflect where and how are we seeing that how the learner is learning professionalism. Are we actually observing it or how are we teaching it? And second, most important, in fact, for CBME, the most important point or the focus was the change of assessment. So CBME says, have a longitudinal continuous assessment, which also emphasizes formative assessment. So portfolios very beautifully gives us a process where you can go for continuous longitudinal assessment of your learners. And in this, like again, focus on that ecosystem. Feedback is the one component of portfolio. So feedback-driven progression, which aligns with the CBME concept, is a part of portfolio. CBME also says give your students remediation opportunities. So we are doing that in portfolios. We can do that in portfolios, of course. And CBME also says use multiple assessments and have multiple assessors. So as we discuss further, we'll focus on this point, how portfolios give us the opportunity to have multiple assessments and multiple assessors. And finally, the CBME also says have the component of workplace-based assessment, right? So if you see in the Miller's pyramid, the portfolios provide us the opportunity to have the assessment at the highest level, that is at the DOS level, because the portfolios have their foundation in the work environment. We are going to utilize the portfolios during the training assessments, right? So it's not alienated from where the performance is happening and where the assessment is happening. So very beautifully, we can utilize the portfolios for satisfying all the components of the CBME. The second point which we emphasize these days is the transformative model of learning. The transformative model of learning is basically the adult learning theory, which is proposed by Misrov's 10 phases, but I'll try to simplify it for the further understanding. We say that the adult learners, the learning is triggered by an experience. So what happens in a portfolio, we are asking the learner to focus on a learning experience. Now, this experience may be anything like, it can be some disorienting dilemma. For example, a negative patient feedback, or a patient of a vaccine refusal, or it can be some maternal death audit. So on this experience, the learner is supposed to actually critically reflect. So this critical reflection is actually an internal process where the learner tries to explain the experience. He explores the experience with his own beliefs, assumptions, and perspectives. After doing this, the further step is to go for reflective discourse. The reflective discourse is actually a social dialogue where the learner discusses his critical impression of the experience with his mentors, maybe with his peers, and gets a feedback and does some self-directed learning. And this whole reflective discourse actually helps him in restructuring his learning. It helps him to arrive at a justified, rational explanation of the whole experience, which is aimed at transformation to make an action plan, which is now for the future. This action plan actually helps him in his growth and professional identity formation. So if we are not putting the portfolios, we are not utilizing the portfolios for reflecting on these experiences and reflections, the experiences may remain episodic. The transformational value which could have been used from these experiences, that we can lose for the learner. So when this model is being discussed, the portfolios have reflection as the soul. So as I mentioned, the components in the portfolio which go into the portfolio is the reflection. So the reflection part, that what has happened, why did it happen? And finally, the critical reflection, that is the learner's experience in his own learning words. In his own learning words are actually important for the learning to happen. So we all know that reflection is actually a metacognitive process. The metacognitive process which requires both cognition and humanitarian attributes, right? So when we ask the learners to put the reflections into writing, that language actually supports their thinking. Writing down things helps the learners to stimulate their reflection. Now you can ask the learners in the portfolios to add their reflections in form of structured or unstructured form based on the learner's level. And instructions, if you need to give instructions, you can follow any model like the Rolfes model or the Gibbs or the Cobb cycle to actually work on the reflections, right? The third argument of using portfolios is that it aligns with the assessment as learning. Now, let me introduce to you this concept. We all know assessment of learning. That is the earlier classical method where we assess after the learning has happened. So the summative assessment. Then came the concept of assessment for learning, which was emphasized under CBME, where they say that give the feedback to the learner after assessment, which is formative assessment, and then the student will modulate his learning for the future, right? But the concept of assessment as learning is the actual assessment which happens as learning, where the boundaries between assessment and learning are actually blurred. So here, each assessment method is utilized as a learning modality. So all assessments will be used for the learner's improvement, right? And finally, the current concept of programmatic assessment. This programmatic assessment concept given by Wooten et al., it describes assessment as a program. So they say that you should not be considering assessment as a one-point activity, but when you are evaluating or when you want to assess your learners, you should have a complete program of assessment, which should have a judicious combination of various assessment methods in a temporal frame of training program. So if you're, say, for example, your PG students, so your assessment should not happen at the end of 3 years. The assessment should be throughout his training program, and it should be embedded in his training learning journey. So portfolios fit very perfectly into this programmatic assessment concept by providing the complete learning chart of the student. So what are we doing in a portfolio? In a portfolio, you will have multiple low-stake assessments. Now, these all assessments can be from all the levels of Miller's pyramid, right? You can have cognitive assessments, you can have affective assessments, you can have assessments for professionalism, and so on. Now, every low-stake assessment provides the learner with a stress-free environment and learning opportunity based on the reflections, the feedback, and the remediation opportunities and the feed forward. So what happens? None of the low-stake assessment, none of the single low-stake assessment is going to contribute to high-stake decisions. In fact, the high-stake decision of the learner to be declared pass or fail would be dependent on the triangulation of all these assessments, as well as the longitudinally gathered data of the learning path of the student. So in true sense, the portfolios are very helpful if we want to introduce programmatic assessment into our universities or into our departments. So having said that, if we are already convinced with the use of portfolios or introducing portfolios, let us see how we will be going about structuring them. So there are a few points which we will be discussing about the structuring process, where you can have two types. Either you can have a completely structured portfolio, or you can have an open portfolio or a student portfolio where the student can decide according to his personalization what kind of portfolio will he develop. But both of them have their own positive and negative things. So for the new learners, for the fresh learners, like the undergraduates, you cannot go for a completely unstructured portfolio. You can use unstructured at the level of the faculty for continuous professional development, etc. But for undergraduates and postgraduates, you need to have some structure to your portfolio so that the learners don't get lost in what is to be done in a portfolio. The second question which comes is how to structure a portfolio, what platforms to be used for structuring. So we have two basic options, paper-based, but these days we are all very obsessed with the digital-based portfolios. So no issues, even for the digital portfolios, we have a lot of options. We can use LMS-based softwares like Moodle offers the portfolio creation, or you can have personalized institutional e-portfolio systems. But both of these or many of these would be actually involving cost. So even if you had a resource constraint or you want to start it on your own level, you can use many free sites which are available, which enable you to create portfolios. However, it is very important to again re-emphasize here that technology can support the process. It will not create the transformation. So if we want to use the portfolios for transformation learning, we need to focus on what the learner and the support group is going to do rather than what platform is going to help us in that, right? Coming on to the stages in implementing the portfolio. So if you are now thinking of planning to implement portfolios in your institutes, the first and foremost important is define the purpose, whether you will be using them for only learning, whether you will be using them for assessment or both, and where will you place them in the curriculum, whether they will be for undergraduates and in which component, and if postgraduates, where, right? Then very important is to select a motivated faculty group, support group, who will be acting as a core group for portfolios, right? So this faculty group would be developing the framework for the portfolio development. And this framework would include some guidelines, which will be given to the stakeholders. They will also enlist the core components. They might also need to give the reflection guidelines, how the reflections have to be put up, and what platform they will have to select the platform to be provided to the learners. Further, once you have done all this, you need to familiarize the learners. So you have to sensitize your learners on that we are going to introduce these portfolios. This is the purpose, this is the guidelines, and this is how we will be utilizing and assessing them, right? And then, very important, now, if your core group is having 4 or 6 people, they will not be sufficient to actually implement portfolios for all the students. Right? You have to train many other people because we need a lot of mentors, a lot of advisors, coach, assessors to be a part of the portfolio ecosystem. So the mentors are actually the people who are motivated enough to actually motivate the learners, to provide them the correct feedback, to provide them constructive feedback, to provide them opportunities to learn, and to help them into creating action plans. So until you have that level of the mentors, the portfolios may not function as thought of, right? And once everything is done, you need to have an assessment plan if you are planning to use portfolios for assessment, and finally the evaluation. Now, when talking of the core components that go into a portfolio, these are few core components. So for creating the components, the framework, like I mentioned, you have to say, when you structure, you need to have that structure that what would be the portfolio outcome be measured as? Would it be based on some learning outcomes or some tasks, or based on competencies, or on interestable professional activities? So the EPA concept is also coming up these days. So what framework we will be using to organize the portfolios? The other components, like what would be the learning goals, objectives? I have a raised hand. May I know what is the issue?
Yes, ma'am, this is Dr. Harveen here, and I want to know what is the EPA mapping? Like EPA, what does it stand for?
Dr. Harveen, you can just put that in written, and we'll discuss the questions maybe later on.
Okay, sorry. I'm so sorry, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
sure.
We'll take up all the points, right? Okay, thank you. So what I'm trying to emphasize by telling these different things, that is learning outcomes, tasks, competencies, EPAs, is what actually would be how will you be finally working the portfolios for? What would be the end points of the portfolio? That is, are your learning outcomes attained by the learner? Or you have given them some tasks which have to be performed by the end of the stipulated time? Or do you have a list of competencies which have to be certified? Or the last thing which I mentioned, EPAs, entrustable professional activities, which are actually the professional work which your graduates are expected to perform when they actually go into the actual workplace finally after they are graduating. So based on that, so these are all different things, but you have to decide on one thing on which you will be building your framework, right? So further, whatever you decide, then further you go for developing the learning goals and objectives. You can have the work samples. You have to tell the students about the work samples, what all they can enter. For example, the work samples can be like it can be the evidences of the data collection. It can be some photographs. It can be some video clips of the interaction with the patients, or it can be some essays or reflective writing they have developed out of some critical incidents, right? So all of these, or some ethical dilemmas which they have faced. So all those work samples have to be entered along with an explanation of why they are including it as a work sample, right? So on all these work experiences, they need to have reflection sheets. You can have assessment evidences of whatever work samples you need. It is not necessary to have assessment for every work sample or for every reflection, right? Then feedback from the faculty or the mentors, the mentor reviews, appraisals can be added. And finally, the action plan. What is the learner now planning to do in the future? And the progression trajectory. So it is very important if you can add this, where the learner is moving in the curve, right? If you can provide an evidence for that, the portfolios actually will become beautiful, right? Here, I would just share a small example. We had actually started working on portfolios for family adoption program for undergraduates in our institute way back when the FAP was introduced in 2021. So with the 2021 batch, we introduced the portfolios as a pilot project. And it has been now published in 2024 as a paper. And I can share this link if you want to further go through the details of the paper. So when we introduced portfolios for FAP program for the undergraduates, we actually adopted this methodology. We developed a framework. We introduced to the learners and we gave the mentors to the students. And then we also had a plan of assessment. So these all details are available in that paper if you go in detail. And this is the second thing which we provided to the students. These were the guidelines. So because these students were new to the family adoption program, so they didn't know what is to be entered into a portfolio. So we gave them the components. The list of components was provided to them. The description of every component was given. What can be their work samples, it was provided to them. And they were also given a small feedback on how many evidences or how many things they have to enter into the portfolio. So this was utilized by our department. Now here again, because in the initial introductory, I said that assessments are very important, can be used as assessment tools. But whenever we are planning to use portfolios for assessment, it is very important to focus on the psychometric properties. So whether we are having good validity and reliability. To ensure that, we need to have a written plan of assessment. So we cannot just say after 3 years, now I'll be using this portfolio for assessment. Whether and how I will be using has to be put and written. And this written plan of assessment should include what will be assessed. So whether the evidences will be assessed, whether the reflections will be assessed, whether the cognitive work will be assessed, whether the professionalism will be assessed. This all needs to go into the plan of assessment. Who will assess? Whether it will be the same mentors who were mentoring them through the learning process, or it will be some external people who will be assessing them at the end, right? How will it be assessed? Will it be assessed through some rubrics or through grading system or through some checklist? That plan has to be written. When will assessment happen? Whether it will be longitudinal or at the end of the whole learning period. And how will the assessment decisions be executed? Will the assessment decision finally give a pass-fail decision, or it will be only used for formative assessment? So putting all these things into the plan of assessment is important, and communicating this to the learners before the start of the portfolio, as well as to the mentors, the whole of the faculty who are involved in this process should be knowing this, right? And the focus of portfolio as an assessment tool should be basically on the criterion based. So it should not be like comparing कि इसने अच्छा किया था, this person has made this better than this. Not like that. It should be based on criterion based and not norm referenced, right? And the strength of the portfolio assessment will only be there if you converge all the evidences, if you utilize triangulation. So all the assessments which have happened over the learning period, you converge the evidence of everything, then only it will be functioning as an effective assessment tool, right? So this was one rubric. Again, the example from our portfolio experience. We developed and validated this rubric to be used for portfolio assessment of family adoption, right? So here we used 5 criteria, that is the learner objectives, the work samples, the reflection sheets, and organization of learning cycle, and the learner development and growth. And we graded it on 0 to 4 scale, and we finally provided an overall grading to the student. So this rubric we've structured and validated, and we have utilized it for the learners to be graded based on the performance in family adoption. So the target users for portfolios, one we have already seen just now, can be undergraduates, and you can use it in undergraduates for many things. Family adoption program is one. You can use it for project works. You can use it very beautifully for electives. You can even use it for some of the certifiable competencies. Maybe not all, but if you want to select certain certifiable competencies, you can have portfolios for that. You can also use them for professionalism development in the undergraduates, like in the ATCOM or in the learner doctor program. You can have portfolios. So this is one FAB portfolio of our student, which I'll just quickly show you for another 2 minutes. So because for this, we actually made a paper-based portfolio. So it was based on, students had to prepare it on paper. So is the screen visible? The portfolio is visible? Dr. Wasim, can you please confirm?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you. So I have just created a PDF of that portfolio because I wanted to just show that how the students have documented it. So this is the portfolio where the student have put all the components, and it is based on the competencies provided by the NMC. So the framework here which was used was the curriculum provided by the NMC. So based on this, the students, they made their own learning objectives. They have written my expectations from family adoption program and organized it based on the visits, right? So if you now further see this, for every visit, the student has entered the activities, whatever activities he performed in that visit, and then what they have taken out, the learning which they have made from that activity, from that visit, whatever they have synthesized, they have tried to put. For example, they collected the demographic data and they have prepared a family tree, predicted tree for that family, right? So they have tried to synthesize that information. Just a second. So further, you can see that the students have also entered the reflections, and the reflection feedback was provided mainly in the verbal mode. So this thing was happening for all the activities. And because we all know that family adoption program is running for 3 years, so at the end of phase 1, we conducted the assessment of the students based on the using that rubric, which I just showed. So based on that rubric, this was the assessment which was conducted by a person other than who was the mentor of the student. So the overall grade was provided to the student, as well as the feedback, written feedback was provided on what was done well, what improvements can be done, and so on. So this process, I'll not go into because this is a big portfolio, around 100 pages. So accordingly, the students kept on entering and improving the next year also. So they kept on adding their learning in the future years. And at the end, they just synthesized and completed. And the assessment happened annually at the end of every phase and then finally. But as yet, we are just using it for formative assessment. We have not introduced it for the summative assessment of family adoption. So for interns also, again, you can use for their workplace-based tracking or their emergency handling or the ethical dilemmas. This is one of the area for postgraduates where I would personally recommend that we all should be actually introducing portfolios, because postgraduate learning is about the 3 years learning. So you can use postgraduate portfolios for the full course, right? So you can use them for the competency acquisition or their EPA progression, or you can also use it for their professional identity formation, like their teamwork, ethics, professional, which we are actually not doing otherwise, right? And also they can also document their research milestone, their thesis work or extra work which they are doing. So here now I will try to share with you 2 videos of my postgraduate students who will take you through the portfolios which they have been maintaining. And I hope the videos will be running. I am just playing, these are already recorded videos, a demo video. So please, you can listen to these videos along with the directions they are being provided. So this is my one PG.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Kanika Goyal, third year PG resident at Adesh Institute of Medical Sciences and Research, Bathinda. I joined my PG course in 2023, and during my PG orientation in first month, I was briefed about maintaining my portfolio, which would include my learning and assessment documentation and appraisal for the PG course. I used Google Sites free platform for creation of my portfolio. Now let me quickly take you through my journey. This is the home page which mentions my profile. The portfolio is arranged in sections which are enlisted in the table of contents, which includes competencies, my thesis work, extramural visits that I've attended, training, workshops, conferences that I have attended, seminars, general club, class that I have attended, district residency program, which is a 3-month program that I've attended at Civil Hospital Bathinda, certifications of various conferences and CMEs, internal assessment and feedback section, and lastly the feed forward section. These are the various tasks that have been enlisted by the department to be performed during the training period according to NMC curriculum. Then, under the thesis section, I have documented my learning objectives, progress of my thesis, challenges faced, and the lessons learned. I am presently at the stage of compiling my final thesis. Under the extramural visits section, I have documented my learning through various visits performed and finally summarized my learning in the form of reflections of what happened, so what, and what next. Under the training, workshops, and conferences section, I have shared my experience of Pulse Polio campaign and other activities like World Health Day. I was also part of organizing team which was organized by our institute in 2024, which is a conference. I showcased my poster at National IAPSM Con and additional other conference and CMAs I attended, and also my participation in One Health activities which we have conducted by our department recently. I have presented my oral presentation in IAPSM Punjab chapter at Faridkot. Then further, all my seminars, general clubs, group discussions, class that I have attended have been organized in different sections, and for each activity my learning objectives and feedback from my faculty mentor have been documented here. Further, under the certification section, learning objectives of attending various conferences and CMEs and their evidence have been documented here. In our institute, we have system of annual internal assessment in which we have theory and practical exam for which the assessment, appraisals and feedback have been documented under this section from all the faculty members. These appraisal forms are as per the NMC curriculum. I have also included self-assessment, which gives me an opportunity to reflect upon my learning journey and what I am planning next so as to meet all the required certifications. Thank you.
So now I'll be moving to another one more portfolio from our institute, a second year PG.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Maninder Singh, a second year resident in the Department of Community Medicine at Adesh Institute of Medical Sciences and Research, Batinda. I was introduced to the concept of portfolio preparation upon joining my PG course. Now, I would like to take you through my e-portfolio. This is my homepage, which provides my introduction. In addition to the components introduced by Dr. Kanika, I will further elaborate on a few of them, including the assessment part. So, coming to the competency section of the clinico-social case assessment, one case is selected monthly from the given list and worked up by the residents. The cases is worked up and evaluated by using the mini CEX by the faculty in charge, depending on the different domains and type of case. So, for example, this case, I have documented my mini CEX evaluation sheet and case summary, and finally seminar presentation which followed thereafter. The second task, that is organizing the health camps. All the learning objectives were explored in discussion with the department faculty and in accordance with the NMC curriculum. I attended my first camp at Miraj village within month of joining. Hence I was involved mostly in observing. For every camp, competency mapping was done and was linked to my continuous assessment sheet, which is embedded in the assessment section, as you can see in this sheet, which is filled by the faculty assessor who grades my competencies and provide me with overall feedback and entrustment to proceed at the next level. Here, my learning was primarily cognitive. I transitioned from theoretical classroom knowledge to contextual understanding of field implementation, where foundational understanding of processes and system were established. Similarly, for the next camp, the same process was adopted. However, the competency level were further modified to my progress level. Next, in the formal feedback section, annual appraisal forms from all faculty members have been documented. Thank you.
So we have seen the examples from UG and PG. And finally, even for continuous professional development, in case of faculty, we can use portfolios where we can put our teaching assessment innovations or whatever research outputs we have, we can put it in the portfolios, and we can also have it as a part of our CVs if you want to use the portfolio. Also, you can use it for your continuous professional development activities like the faculty development programs like the ACME or the FAMER if you are undergoing, and also for the mentorship documentation. So actually, my personal experience with the portfolios started when I joined my FAMER in 2020. And that was the first time when I tried my hands on creating a portfolio. And actually, it's a very happy feeling to today also to go back to that portfolio. I'll just show you my portfolio briefly because it has all my journey of the 2 years of the FAMER area, right? So here I'll just show you one component of feedback section which was missed in the PGs. We had the faculty assessment there, but if you also want to include the peer assessment, peer reviews, so you can add the forms which can be the links can be given to the peer or to the faculty, which they can fill, and automatically they will be uploaded into your section of the portfolio, right? So it's very nice to see if you can put your, even you can create a QR code for your portfolio and put it in your CV also if you want to showcase it in your professional areas, right? So having said and done all that, I come to again the question of why portfolios? Why not something else? So actually, the focus of the portfolios is to convert the evidence into tangible impact. So when we are talking of the evidence of reflection, we said improves metacognition, and it will ultimately improve the patient safety by impacting the better clinical reasoning of the learners. Similarly, Feedback, which is rich in portfolios, will help in improving the professionalism and provide an accreditation advantage impact to our learners. And because portfolios give us ample opportunities of longitudinal assessment, they will improve the competency tracking and focus on early remediation opportunities, thereby reducing the failure rates for the learners. So, coming to the end, the take-home message: portfolios are not storage folders. They are not the places to dump just the evidence. And portfolios do not work by themselves. They need the whole ecosystem. So again, focus on the ecosystem, the learner, the work environment, the faculty, the opportunities, they all need to be there. The stakeholders need to be there. Reflection drives transformation, and actually the mentorship determines the impact on the learning. So assessment of portfolios is actually an art, because most of the components in assessment and portfolio are qualitative, unlike in most of the other assessment tools. And finally, the portfolios support lifelong professional identity formation. So these were some of the references which are used for preparing today's session. Thank you all for your participation, and we are now open for the further handing over to the organizers.
Very much, madam. Thank you. Audience can raise questions by raising your hands, or else you just type your question in the chat box.
Sir, I suppose there are a couple of chats in the chat box. We'll take that first.
Yeah. Can read out.
Yeah, I'll just open the chat box.
Wasim, can you read out to the audience? And as a speaker can.
Yeah, sure, sir. 1 minute, sir. Yes. Ma'am, there is actually one question. It's a very age-long question, not related to today's session. What are the certifiable competencies of PSM?
Okay. So actually, if you talk of the undergraduates or postgraduates, if we talk of undergraduates, the certifiable competencies are mentioned in the new curriculum which has come in GMER 2024.
Yes, ma'am. UG and PG as well.
For PGs, there are no as such certifiable competencies mentioned in the curriculum, but yes, it is left to the department, to the institutes. They can have a list of, that is why, like when I showed our own experience with PG portfolio, we actually developed, extracted some of the tasks which we think actually they are not, I mean, the concept of competencies is very different. So we have actually tried to move a little ahead to have tasks as the outcome, because every task will involve multiple competencies. So that is why I was mentioning that point of going on to the level of the EPAs. So I think now is the time to shift for at least for the PGs from performing certifiable competencies or tasks to go to the level of EPAs. So I think, in fact, that is a complete session in itself, which we can, I think, take up in future sessions. But as such, the certifiable competencies for PGs are not mentioned in the curriculum. But for UGs, the new curriculum has the list of certifiable competencies. They were not there in the earlier curriculum.
Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Tanu ma'am, there are a couple of questions which is aligning towards the same theme. I'll just put it together.
Yeah.
Surgical side or clinical side residents have a lot of inertia in portfolio making. How to convince them about it, and followed by the biggest concern is lack of motivation and fatigue among students as well as faculty. How to deal with this?
Okay. So this is, in fact, I would say the most important and pertinent question, because until you answer that, you cannot actually go ahead with portfolio or for that matter, any tool which you want to introduce. So one thing is, until you attach assessment to some new thing, I mean, if you want to introduce portfolio, if you're not attaching the assessment component, it will not drive learning. This is a known psychological fact among students, that if you don't give the weightage to a tool, I mean, to something into assessment, they might not be motivated. So one motivation which you can give is have some component of portfolio either in your internal, at least you can have it in an internal assessment. You have the full liberty under the NMC to have anything in the internal assessment, right? So portfolios, in fact, if you again see the 2023 GMER guidelines, where they have given us a table where they have put key internal assessment has to be under such headings. There they have mentioned portfolio. So though they have not explicitly mentioned to have portfolios for the UGs, right? So if you are attaching some weightage of assessment, one thing you can motivate, right? Second thing is, actually, we are also concerned with that if our faculty is not motivated, we cannot motivate our learners, right? So if you're giving some, your faculty this sensitization, because it involves a lot of effort on the part of the faculty to actually mentor every student, because you need to have one-on-one conversation. And this problem we have faced when we have, for PG, it is very easy. In fact, I'll say for PGs, it is manageable. But for UGs, if you are trying to introduce, say for FAP, we have introduced, it has been 3 years now, for 150 students, and we have one faculty mentor for 25 students each. So it requires motivation of the teachers first, who will motivate the learners, right? And then you can show them in what ways the portfolios can benefit them in future also. Because these days, yes, I'll mention one point more. Many students are like applying for the jobs or for USMLEs or other things. So if the students are carrying those portfolios, because portfolios would be actually the actual evidence of your workplace experience. It's all about experiential learning. So if you're putting that across to your employer or to wherever you are applying, so it would be actually a very good document which will be supporting your actual performance. Though there are many more solutions which we can offer, but I think with the paucity of time, these 2-3 would be at this point. We can then take up further questions.
I think
sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, please. I was just about to conclude, ma'am, that's it from the chat box. We can now take the questions with the raise of hands.
Okay.
There's one last question, however. Negative remarks in logbook or portfolio creates a huge stress in student as well as faculty later on. How to deal with that?
Very right. Again, because if I have to talk about assessment in portfolios, I would need one full day, right? So because you have to plan your assessment in the portfolio in such a way that it will be actually helping the students to actually go to at a level where they are. So what will be the end point of a portfolio? The end point of the portfolio has to be the learning has happened. The learning outcomes have been achieved. Now, whether those learning outcomes in the form of outcome-based education, or they're in the form of EPAs, or they're in the forms of certifiable competencies. So if you are putting a negative remark, see, that is maybe one fault at the level of the faculty mentor, because the negative remark, how you are providing feedback. The full session in itself, how to provide feedback for the learners during formative assessment. So how to sandwich your negative remarks in between the positive and all those things. But yes, those remarks are used for the progression of the student. You need to have in your assessment plan whether those remarks would be used for the final assessment. Right? So it is not important that every assessment which is embedded in the portfolio will be utilized for the final assessment. Even the reflections. Now, one biggest threat to the reflection writing is that my reflections are going to be assessed. So sometimes even for a critical incident, like the student has failed some ethical dilemma, something wrong has happened by the PG student. He has done some wrong procedure or in a wrong way. So that becomes a critical incident report, which he puts in his work experience and reflects on that. Now, that should not be included actually into assessment. That should be utilized only for the learning process. So the best thing is that you use it only for the learning process. So you demarcate. In fact, in the beginning itself, you can tell the students that what components of the portfolio would go into the assessment and what not, because otherwise they will not reflect truly. They might try to hide things. But when you are using reflections for learning, for modifying them, for transforming them, then do not include it in the assessment part.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Mohammed sir, that's it from the chat box. I hand it over to you to take over the questions from the raised hands as well as the other speakers. Thank you.
Yeah, for the last question, Madam described it very narratively, and I would like to add one more suggestion to this. Some component of the reflection can have a confidential
Yes.
things. What do you see? How do you see this, ma'am? If it is
very true, sir. Again, going into the details of the portfolio compilation, actually the portfolio is the intellectual content completely of the student. So we can give the student the component where they can have the control on what things can be observed by the other people and what cannot be. So there is a component, there is an option of hiding what can be visible to the mentors or to the assessors. So if we are not going to use those incidences or those negative remarks, but then again, there should be a written guideline on that. Right. So, yes, very true that we can have those points not to be used for assessment.
Students can seek help. How
sorry,
the assessors
I think one
or
of
the faculty can help, because when the confidential component is helps for learners when he reflects or what to see in future. I mean, things he will forget. So when he open what had happened in the past, he will improve upon.
True, sir. True.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Is there any question, please?
Two raised hands.
Yes, you can ask them to unmute.
Dr. Harveen, yes.
Yes, good evening, ma'am. I have just two questions. So how is a CV is like a permanent thing, right? So my question is, I have no idea about the portfolio. So my question is, like, can the portfolio be changed at any time, or is it just like the CV? Like once you have
No, ma'am. Portfolio is actually a dynamic document. It is kept on updating maybe every day or every week. So that depends upon the learner. He has to keep on updating it. And then you need to have, that is what I said, na, ki you have to have a purpose. Whether if like you are introducing it for the training period. So you have those 3 years where you would be putting everything and then closing it after 3 years. But otherwise, like if you're using it for faculty for continuous professional development, you can keep on updating it every day.
Okay,
so that's a dynamic document. Even you can certain times you can think of removing some of the components later on, which you might feel are not useful now, and maybe they are you have more better evidences than that which you had already put. So you always have an option to change it. It's a dynamic thing.
Ma'am, I'm a dentist, so this is not in the Dental Council of India. So even then, can I put a portfolio regarding? But I'm pursuing PhD.
Exactly. You can use it even on your own personal basis. You can have it for yourself as a faculty. In fact, in the chat box, I was just seeing that someone was asking that can faculty use portfolios? So I'll answer to that yes, portfolios are very good tool for the faculty, because when we are faculty, we generally do not track our progress. So maybe we are not using it for giving it to someone for assessing us, but we can use it for self-assessment. So we can take the feedback from our peers, we can take the feedback from our other seniors, but we can always use these portfolios, create portfolios for our continuous professional development.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was a great presentation, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Prasanna, I can see raised hand.
Madam, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I had posted my question in the chat box, but somehow it was overlooked. Anyway, it was a nice explicit presentation, and I am much impressed about the advantages of this e-portfolio. But my questions, which started at the beginning itself, assessment of learning and for learning explicitly we have understood clearly. But the gray area between for learning and as learning.
Yes. So actually now,
Abhi
sir, what we are now focusing, see, assessment of learning, we all understand. Aapne padha diya, aur uske baad you have done the assessment. So nothing to be done, nothing to be changed after that. Now we are not following that. In CBME, we have shifted to the culture of assessment for learning. But what happens in that also? Usme bhi what do? We teach or we take an internal test. After that, we give the formative feedback to the student. And what will happen? The student will improve maybe after 2 months or after 3 months when the next test would be held or next option will be available.
What we are doing is we provide them a second opportunity, third opportunity with the constructive feedback. So until they complete the task to the acceptable level. So this is in practice at our institution.
That is actually a remediation practice.
Yeah.
That is actually a practice of remediation, right? So
until the outcome is attained.
So when we talk of assessment as learning, we will do the assessment sitting with the student. So the student is
workplace-based assessment.
Workplace-based, exactly. So it will be that I am sitting. The actual word assessment itself in Latin means to sit with the learner during assessment, right? So this is what happens when we use portfolios. The student is performing. We are giving them feedback right and there itself they can modify their action. So even in that same, so that modality, that assessment modality is used as a learning modality.
Thank you very much, madam. So as far as the workplace-based assessment is more impulsively practiced for the postgraduates as compared to the undergraduates.
True.
Am I right in that?
But then you can identify the opportunities. Like for my field, I said family adoption program. It is completely an experiential learning opportunity.
Field, community medicine here.
So that is a completely learning, experiential learning, right? So you can always have, even for electives, what we are doing it in the actual workplace, right? Even for other, like you can think of some certifiable competencies which are actually done in the workplace. So for that, you can have the portfolios.
Our practice, the time constraint for the UG is more as compared to the postgraduate, which is field available.
True, sir.
Thank you very much, madam, for a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Can we go to the next question? Thanks.
Sir, thank you, Prasanna, sir. There is one more question from Dr. Parthasarthi, sir. We are glad to have, sir. Ma'am, how to manage the copy-pasting problem among the students, especially when the learning activities is same like extramural visits, even reflections are copy-pasted.
So that is where the role of the faculty would come, right? So in fact, I personally would prefer physical portfolio, paper-based portfolio than the e-portfolio because copy-pasting is very easy to be done in e-portfolio. But see, then it is the commitment, it is the motivation which you have introduced to your learners and to your faculty. Because you will need to have both of those things to actually make the portfolios work. So if you are actually evaluating and then you are reading, because you will have to read through the reflections. So it is, and actually, practically speaking, I know it is very difficult to read through the reflections. In fact, other than that, I always ask my faculty to actually discuss with the students rather than make it right. So make it unstructured. So you can always have, and the other option is, which we are in the process of actually introducing into our PG portfolios also, because what we encountered was that it becomes very lengthy for everyone to keep on writing reflections and writing the feedback. We said you can always record audio. Whenever the faculty and the student are interacting, you can record the audio and put that audio clip in the portfolio. So that is one, I can say, solution which you can have, but then you will have to sit with the learner. It cannot be done as the learner is sitting in a separate place and you are at a separate place.
Thank you, ma'am.
Will you encourage the learners to reflect on their mother language?
Yeah, that can be very nicely done. And even the patient interactions, the interactions with the patients, if the students are having, they can, with the consent of the patient, of course, anything which is to be documented related to the patient, consent for that has to be taken. And they can video record it or audio record it and put it in the e-portfolios if they want to highlight that learning.
Thank you. Sir, before we wrap up with just last or maybe like penultimate question, I would request the audience to stay back for a group photo. Also, as the link for feedback is shared with you, request you to kindly fill the feedback form. The certificate is directly attached and embedded into it. Once you fill the feedback form and submit, you will get the certificate on your registered email. Ma'am, just a penultimate question, if I may take. How to develop professionalism among faculty so that it passes to the students indirectly? That is definitely out of the purview of today's session, but I would request you to kindly take that question.
Okay, so in fact, I would say to inculcate professionalism amongst faculty, we can have faculty portfolios also. No harm in that if our stakeholders want us to develop and want to monitor the professionalism amongst faculty, we can have that also. But otherwise, the development of professionalism, there's a lot of disturbance actually. Can you please mute the person who is... So if
Yes,
I
ma'am,
talk...
please.
So if I talk of how to develop professionalism amongst our faculty, they already have passed through that stage when they were already postgraduates. So I can't say if at this stage we can give the, directives to the faculty to actually change their professionalism other than the motivation part. But at least we can work on the budding professionals, the 3 years professionalism exposure during the postgraduates, because see, if we are the role models to our postgraduate students and to our undergraduate students, until and unless we become their role models, they cannot replicate that behavior. So in fact, I would, that's a sorry state of figure that we have a deficit of professionalism these days, even in our role models. But I think that is only the internal motivation can work at that level.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Yes,
Mohammed
ma'am.
sir, I think
Yes,
that
ma'am.
was our last question.
Yes, I should add on that last question. So some institutions insist upon monthly report or quarterly report by the faculty. So when portfolio is attached to it, definitely it will improve the performance. So by practicing portfolios at faculty levels, it will reflect on student level better. They will also improve their portfolios.
Yes, you can have your appraisals, the appraisal forms which you have. In fact, in every institute, appraisal form is being given to the faculty. So you can always have that in the form of a portfolio. A link can be given and the faculty can be putting up their documentation.
The structure can be arrived with the consensus of faculty.
Yeah.
So that would be good. Very interesting, ma'am. Very interesting. We get a new insight into this topic, how to implement and all. I think audience also wanted to have one more session to clarify some more doubts they have. It was very nice to have you for this topic. Thank you once again, ma'am. Over to Wasim.
Thank you, sir.
So can I request all the participants to briefly switch on their camera for a group pic? Mohammed sir, if you may do the honors, we are glad to have joined with many of our mentors. I can see Dr. Rajiv sir, Dr. Parmod Goel sir, dear friends, Dr. Daljit, Dr. Lavanya, Ranjit Guhan sir, welcome. It's been a tremendous gathering today. Mohammed sir, can you please ensure a picture is taken?
Hello.
Yes. Yeah, who will scan?
Good evening, sir. We could not find the feedback link.
Good evening. Yeah, that'll I think directly come to your registered mail. I'll confirm from the technical team. There was a direct link given for certificate generation. I hope you have filled that.
Yes.
So in the chat box, I could not find it.
Okay, I'll reshare the link. The link, sir.
Reshare the link.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So at this juncture, I thank every one of you on behalf of IAPSM. I thank the patrons, General Secretary and President Dr. Ashok Kumar Singh, sir, all of them were motivating these sessions to happen future. So next talk will be on April 6th, will be on AI for medical educators. AI for medical educators. The title will be Prompt to Praxis by Dr. Parth Sati. So I request all to join and give support. So looking forward to meet you next April 6th. Thank you once again.
Yes,
Shall
sir.
we wind up? Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for the patient listening. I know it was a long session, but thank you all.
Great job by you, ma'am. Thank
Thank
you.
you, madam. What an
Thank you, sir.
excellent session.
Thank you, sir.
It was really great interaction and very good session.
Thank
Good
you,
evening,
sir.
Tanvir,
Thank you.
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.